Okay, super. Yeah, I think let's get started. So, yeah, I think today's session is primarily about the Microsoft Azure Architect preparation, and primarily we'll be covering more about the exam point of view. What are the topics to be looked at from exam point of view? Because this course is very vast. I mean, there are a lot of topics to cover. Um, but I think it's not that all products of Azure is there in this exam. But it is like most of the products are there. So we need to, I would say, around 70 to 80% of the products are all covered for this exam 300 AZ-300. But yeah, just yeah. So today we'll go through primarily what is a Microsoft certified badge, and what is Azure 300 exam basics, and what topics we're going to look in from exam point of view, which topics are important, and what is the coverage percentage for each of the topic in the exam, and also each topic in detail. The reason why we are going through this is primarily you'll get an understanding of which topics you need to cover for the exam. So that way, this is a good topic to start with. Maybe from next session onwards, I will go deep into each other topic. Uh, so so with that, right, I think so. First, before going to see what is this solution architect expert badge is about. So uh, so this is if you look at this badge has two things: AZ-300 and AZ-301. So AZ-300 is Azure Architect Technologies, and 301 is design. Okay, so 300 is technologies. So that is what the first exam, and that's a prerequisite. First you take that exam, and followed by that 301, which is design. So and then if you look at, I think this presentation primarily focus about 300 because that is a prerequisite for this exam. So let's focus more on the 300 exam. But I think you might be already knowing it. There is a new exam which is already rolled out, which is the replacement to 300 also. So that is 303 and 304. So, but more or less the topics I saw, most of them are more or less same. So not much difference, but except that few topics are removed. So it is a subset of this course. So in 300 versus 303, some topics are removed. So which means 300 is having more content to read compared to 303. But again, this 300 is valid till September 30th. After that, it is only 303. Uh, but good one difference is that one advantage is that people who are taking AZ-300, so they no need to take 303 again, so they can directly jump to 304. Uh, so that is the second part, right? The new design, they can directly jump. Uh, so that provision is available. But yeah, since I'm focusing on 300, so this slide talks about the 300 exam. So, but more or less the concepts are same for 303. So, from exam point of view, what you need to know is that this exam uh, is generally $165. Number of questions are 40 to 60. The number is not fixed. So it varies from person to person. So then exam time is 150 minutes, and the passing score is 700. Okay. So and exam basics are no negative mark, and there are what type of questions will come. It's not just always multiple choice. So it is, some of them are multiple choice. So some of them are lab. So there's also lab in this exam, which means you have to do a lab exercise for this session. So yeah, and if you compare with other AWS equivalent certification, we don't have any labs, but here we have lab. So they will give some questions around lab. Uh, and the third set is some questions you get on case studies. So they give case study, and they will ask you to come up with answers. So it's more scenario based, but it's more bigger scenario. So like they'll give a case study, which is and then you need to answer the questions based on case study. So summary. So we'll have multiple choice questions and lab and questions based on case studies. These are three combinations that you see. Uh, so there is a separate section which I will talk in the last slide, which talks about what lab, uh, what are things that you get in lab. I will explain that the one of the slides coming in the last. But yeah, but for us, this multiple choice questions are again further split into like it will be multiple choice or a list, build a list, or hot area, drag and drop, reorder. More about the fancier way of asking question, not just multiple choice. Okay, not just the radio buttons or checkboxes. So you'll have yeah, some drag and drop stuff and reorder stuff and all those things also. So I might see that type of questions also. So um, yeah, okay. So then exam coming to the sequence of questions, right? Um, the multiple choice, the sequence, if you see between MCQ, which is multiple choice questions, versus lab versus case studies. You see, generally it varies from person to person, but general pattern is that multiple choice questions, maybe some first 15 questions will come in multiple choice, then followed by lab. Again, multiple choice questions will come, then lab, and followed by case studies. But this is the most common pattern, but this can change here and there. But mostly you get either two labs or one lab. Uh, it depends. So, but generally, yeah, this is the most common. But like two labs will be coming, and in between you have multiple choices, and then followed by last case studies. So this is a common sequence for this exam. So it is a bit different compared to the other exams. Uh, then yeah, of course, the exam result aspect, you will get the status immediately. Immediately after the exam, you'll know pass or fail. Uh, but of course, your scorecard will come after 1 week, similar to any other exam. Then, just in case if you fail, the retake is first retake is within 24 hours. You can retake the exam. The second retake you have to wait for 14 days. So that's the retake policy. Then cancellation policy is like just you have to there are no additional charges in case you want to cancel it or reschedule it. So, but if you're doing it within 6 days, there is no charges. But if the cancellation is within 5 days, then there's a nominal fee is applied. Okay, so some we'll come back to this later. So, for example, coming to the topics, right? So this topics is important. So most of the topics, if you see, the more weightage is for the first topic, deploy and configure infrastructure. So 40 to 45% of the questions will come under this category. So this covers all the important aspects, uh, like starting from virtual machines and other things. Which usually we'll see this for the following slides. And then workloads and security, 25 to 30%. Create and deploy apps, 5 to 10%. Authentication and security, 5 to 10%. Develop for cloud and for Azure storage, 15 to 20%. That's a logical split for this exam. This is already there in the official documentation of Azure. Yeah, just in case you might be already seen this, but yeah, this is this is the official page where you can see this information here. Okay, which topics come where, and this is a one link which talks about this which I opened here. So I think this is the details where it has all the in each section what topics are going to come is all also covered here. But I just summarized here in this. Um, okay, so if you look at these are the primary components that you might have to focus for the 300 exam. So starting from monitoring, virtual machines, serverless, microservices, web apps, containers, storage. VNet is networking. Then AD, RBAC, uh, Cosmos DB, relational DB, auto scaling, messages and events, AI, IoT, media services. automation, security, and identity. So these are the components we might have to focus for this exam. Right, I think if we go in detail, right, I think which the first section, right, this is very important because this gives 40 to 50, 45% of the questions will come from this section. So deploy and configuring infrastructure. So yeah, this primarily includes high-level topics are like analyze resource utilization and consumption. This is more about important. I highlighted the important sections here so that will give you an idea of which area is important. You should look at more about the diagnostic settings, alert configuration, uh, metrics. I mean, it's something like Azure Monitor. If you have to summarize this, right? So this is Azure Monitor. So most of the this is one of the important aspects for Azure Monitor, where you will primarily how to visualize the diagnostic data in Azure Monitor and how to see the create action groups and how to monitor the unused resources, how to see the monitor, how to monitor the spending, and all those things. So primarily on the resource utilization and consumption. So this is the high level category, and then and also create and config storage accounts. So there are a lot of the various categories of storage is options are available in Azure. So you should look at how to configure the storage and also how to access the storage and Azure AD authentication for the storage aspect. Like you need to give permissions so for the storage. So the permissions will be done through Azure AD. And so in Storage Explorer, which is a tool like ID which you'll use to access the storage. So an activity log, Azure Storage Replication, and Azure Storage account failover. So these are something on the storage aspects. Then create and configure the virtual machines for Windows and Linux. So this is a VM aspect. Yeah, how do you create a VM for Windows and Linux, and how do you configure networking, storage for a VM, dedicated host, how do you create. Then scale sets is like scaling, how do you scale up, scale down resources. Again, this continuing on the same aspect. How to now create a VM, so how to automate it. Right now, you can do it one time, but if you want to do it multiple times, then you need to automate it. Then how will you automate the VMs? I think the answer is Azure Resource Manager template. Um, Resource Manager template is primarily used for creating the automation aspect of VMs. And then VHD templates, how to use the VHD templates, virtual hard disk templates, deploy from template, save a deployment as ARM template. Like you created a VM, but you want to create hundreds of such VMs with the same configuration, right? So you can create one VM and save that as a template, and automate it by with that template. So you get 100 VMs. So and then how to deploy the Windows and the next VMs. This is more about automation of VMs. So that is also covered in this exam. And then next is create the connectivity between virtual networks. It's more about networking aspect. This will be one of the trickiest topic in this section, given these two sections. Networking, especially because people who don't have background with networking, this will take some time to understand. But yeah, conceptually it is not complex. So it is if you understand the basics, it should be can easily get through these concepts. So here it is called VNet or virtual network. Both are same. So yeah, VNet is a short form of virtual networks. So how will you create uh, two different networks? How will you connect? You will connect via peering. It's called VNet peering. And two networks, how will you connect? When we say network, like you can imagine this as a network boundary where a virtual machine 1 is deployed, another network where virtual machine 2 is deployed, and but you want to ensure that these two virtual machines you want to talk to each other. Then you might have to create a peering connection between these two VMs, and also VNet connections also you need to create. Yeah, so those things. So then virtual network connectivity, then virtual network gateway. These are the things that you need to know on this section. The next is how to manage them. You know, created it, and how will you manage it. If you look at all the sections, will have similar category. First, you will talk about create, and then talk about implement and manage and automate. So that is the high level steps. So yeah, I mean, the high level sections in this. So it is more about managing the virtual network. You created this virtual network. Now there will be requirements to configure private IP, configure public IP, change the networking routes, networking interfaces. You want to create a subnet under that virtual network. Yeah, all these things just a high level, but I think I'm just making you comfortable with the terminologies. So um, it's not new. At least you'll be familiar with the names that are used. So um, yeah, and then you'll also, once you create a subnet, then you'll also create a virtual network security group. It's more about which ports you want to allow and which ports you don't want to allow. So and then this at network level, and you can do the same thing at application level as well. So it's more about port, which port you want to allow and which port you want to deny, all those things. Um, then again, we're continuing to third slide on the same topic because this is a bigger topic. So the next is a security aspect, Active Directory. So Azure AD is what is used for your for giving permissions and other things. So how will you create a domain in AD, and how will you do a protection? How will you do AD join? Then self-service password resets. I mean the login aspect, right? How will you, when you log in, you use Azure AD. So how will you configure the password reset feature for login? Uh, then conditional access policies, which is important topic. So how will you, for every product within Azure, so you need to give access policies to either allow or deny. So you need to give a policy. So that that conditional policies, and then how to create multiple directories within Azure AD. So all those things. It's more about security aspect. Then hybrid scenarios, we're talking about cloud versus on-premise. Okay, so on-premise is not, is like your data center, which is not in cloud, and so now data center want to talk to cloud. So then that comes the hybrid strategy. So for a hybrid combination, what options you have? So Azure AD Connect is one such option where you can transfer the data from your data center to cloud using AD Connect. Then federation, uh, single sign-on. How will you integrate single sign-on? Um, so single sign-on is like you. I'm talking about scenario where, for let's say, from your company, you can log in with your employer user ID and password, and automatically you should be connected to Azure based on the privileges that you have. That should be accounted. For example, you should have access to only storage. Then you'll have access only to storage. But that rule is defined in the user ID is not created again in cloud. So those user IDs are created in your on-premise Active Directory. So yeah, so you're talking about online on-premise scenarios. On-premise, you're already an employer of a company. You have a data center, and you have everything softwares. You have, for example, AD, you already have it in your local. How will you don't want to create the same thing again in cloud? So how will you then transfer the data from your on-premise to cloud? That is what is this hybrid identities. Yeah, in this, especially on the AD side, AD Connect, Federation, single sign-on, then troubleshooting, AD Connect, password sync, and write back. So these are the aspects, and then implement solutions that use virtual machines. Again, here in the virtual machines, we can also provision VMs, create ARM templates, disk encryption. I mean, the VMs you can, the hard disk is there, so right, the hard disk you can encrypt it, right? So how do you do the encryption on the virtual machine hard disk? and let's say you want to take a backup of your data in your virtual machine, how will you do it? So that is what is this tool. Before going to the next topic, any questions on this? And we're just covering on some of the terminologies, but I think just to be familiar with the terminologies, I think we'll cover all these things in the following session. Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. Next one is this implement workloads and security. This is the second topic. This is 25 to 30%. So workloads is all about how you migrate servers. Workloads, the terminology is very popular. Cloud terminology, workload. So anything can be small is also workload, big is also workload. So workload is some job, some work. So then we're talking about the data here. So how will you migrate the servers to Azure? So they generally say, how will I migrate this workload from my on-premise to cloud? When they're referring workload, they're talking about either some server or some data, or it could be some storage aspect. So yeah, it's a very common terminology. Workload is a very common terminology in cloud. So yeah, here we're talking about how to migrate servers to cloud using Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate is one such tool to use for migrations. Um, this is a question. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Is there any question? I'm hearing some.
No, no.
Okay. Okay. The next is serverless computing. Serverless is also important for the exam. So how will you serverless is more about like we, for example, an advanced concept where this VM is having will be running for forever, right? So if you create a VM, it is running forever. So serverless is like one time compute. You get the one time compute once you execute the job, so it will be closed. So functions. I mean, Azure Functions is one such category under serverless, but that's more about the implementation part. But there are many products which are already developed using serverless concepts. So in Azure. So one such, so some of them are like Logic App. Logic App is one such case where it is completely serverless, and Azure Functions is a primary tool using which you can implement the serverless computing concept. But some products which are in Azure which are purely serverless products. Yeah, so such are Logic App, Event Grid. Event Grid is more about sending notifications, events, sending about events. Then Service Bus. So these are, I think we used at least in other project we use Service Bus, right? So Service Bus and also this implement the application load balancing. So load balancing is more about how will you, if there is a high load, how will you balance it? So primary tools are application gateway. Uh, uh, then if you want to add a domain name, DNS. Uh, so yeah, DNS level also you can do um, you can do a load balancing. So that is Azure front door service. And then traffic manager is primarily for on-premise to cloud. If you want to transfer data, so you will also use traffic manager. So yeah, I think just get familiarized with this topics names. So next is again continuing on this, integrate the on-premise network with Azure virtual network. So this is the on-premise to cloud setup. So generally we use VPN for the scenario. So Azure VPN gateway. In VPN there are two combinations. One is site-to-site VPN, and other one is express route. So express route is primarily used for uh, like if you want to transfer the data immediately, and you want to transfer the data or not on internet. Like you want to, like this is on-premise and then cloud. You want to transfer between on-premise to cloud, but the data should be on not transferred over internet. It should be private. Then we use express route. Um, so, so yeah, site to site VPN also use the same category, but there is also always it is on internet but private. Uh, but this is private by default. Then virtual WAN. Uh, if we're talking about wider area, then it is WAN. Then then yeah, it's all about how will you. I mean, in case there are in troubleshooting aspects in this networking, how will you troubleshoot it? So those things are covered under this category. Then security aspect, MFA, multi-factor authentication. So apart from your login, there will be another factor of authentication. Let's say or RSA token equivalents, right? So that is MFA. And how will you configure the alert, fraud alerts, then bypassing options, trusted IPs, verification methods. This are all comes under that MFA topic. The next is the role-based access control. Uh, so custom role. Uh, how how will you yeah, like how will you? It's all about roles. Roles is nothing but access, right? Well, like whether what role you have, or it's more about authorization. So how will you manage the authorization using role-based control? So for example, I'm logging into Azure. Which modules I will have read access, which modules I have write access. So that is set by role. So how will you give roles to an individual or a group? So that is what is this. So yeah, it's more of that's called as RBAC, role-based access control, short name. So RBAC is a very common word, but yeah, when the RBAC expansion is role-based access control. And then how will there also there's something called Azure policies. How will you implement Azure policies? Then how will you assign RBAC roles and all. So that's on this. So summary is this topic is primarily covering the workloads, then which serverless computing load balancers, uh, the networking, MFA, role-based access control. These are the topics which are covered in this section. Now this is a smaller topic, create and deploy apps. So it is just these two sections only. Only creating a web app using a PaaS model. So this is where I think you might be familiar with this Azure App Service web app. So this is a PaaS model where you can deploy a Java or Python or a .NET based application. Um, uh, yeah, you can just if you have the code, you can just deploy it. The runtime will be provided by Azure. The runtime of Java or .NET will be provided by Azure. So yeah, so that is most used product within Azure Web App. So and then yeah, documentation of APIs, how will you do it? Then Web App for containers. This is we can do it without container and we can do it with container also. So and then web jobs. Then how will you enable logging for it? So all those things is covered under this web apps. Um, the next is containers. This is it's all about web apps using PaaS. But if you are interested in only container-based implementation, then you have a better option than this, which is AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service. Right. So yeah, it's Kubernetes on Azure. It's Azure Kubernetes Service. So you can create a container and store the container in Azure Container Registry. So it's nothing but a repository of all your containers. So like uh, like our Docker registry, right? Similar to that. So Docker registry is public; anyone can access it. But yeah, if you want a private version, then you can use Azure Container Registry to host all your containers. Uh, so so that's about the Kubernetes and container registry. Let's say you don't want to use Kubernetes, but you want to use container concepts. So the alternative for that is Azure Container Service. So container instance, sorry. So Azure Container Instance. So that also you can use, where you can primarily, yeah, manage the container settings using some code. So how to do that? That is also covered in this exam. It's more about web app service, Azure Web App, sorry, Azure App Service Web App, then Web Jobs, App Service background, And then in container world, it is AKS, ACR, then ACI. So these are the topics in this aspect. Then implementing authentication. So this is also a smaller topic. So this is more about how will you implement authentication using certificates, form-based authentication, token-based authentication, MFA, OAuth to manage identity service principal authentication. It's all more about security aspects, and also you can you can also encrypt the data. With like this, the most common thing is that your data travel transfer from one product of AWS to another product of AWS. So, for example, your application in a VM running a Java application running on a VM, so it would push the data to storage. So basically now we are moving from VM to a cloud. Data is moving from VM to storage. Sorry. So in that case, so the data is in movement. So then you want to encrypt the data in the moment. So that's why when in encryption they will have always two options. One is at rest and in transit. In transit means data is in move. So yeah, so now here you're talking about how to encrypt the data at rest, which means the data is already in some storage, and how will you encrypt that? So, so that is what is encryption at rest. Then also how will you implement Azure confidential compute, SSL and TLS, and if you want to store your secrets, certificates, other things in encrypted format, you can use Key Vault. So Key Vault is also another popular tool. Uh, So yeah, so that is also one place where you can store all your secrets there. The last topic is about develop for cloud and for Azure storage. So storage is an important point from exam point of view. This as it's 15-20%. So here this will cover um, the storage. Even message based implementation is also part of storage. I mean, similar to storage, where data will also be stored in messaging softwares. Some of them are like yes, like Event Grid, Relay Service, Notification Hub, Event Hub. These are all service bus. So yeah, how to configure the messages between this and how to integrate two different applications via asynchronous model. So so how will you do it? So that is what is application A wants to send data to application B. Uh, but yeah, so they have to be asynchronous. Then you use all this messaging in between. So event grid, event hub, service bus, these are all queues. So notification hubs, these are all softwares which will help you to do this integration aspect. The next is auto scaling. Auto scaling is also there are auto scaling rules and auto scaling patterns are also used. How to know about that. Uh, and also singleton application instances, how to implement it. Um, yeah, and then address the transient state. How do you do that using auto scaling? Those are all covered in this auto scaling aspect. Next is database side. Cosmos DB is one of the most popular DB in the Azure. So here you primarily use it is a uh, like what to say the multi storage. I mean multi-region. Primary can be in multiple regions. So and it is very good. It has very good options to replicate the data across multiple regions. So yeah. So basically, how will you store the data into the Cosmos DB? Create run with the CRUD operations: create, read, update, delete, and then implementing the partition schemes. Then how will you also implement the consistency level for operations? It's more about the uh, typical CRUD operations and how will you manage the consistency at a database level. So that's about the Cosmos DB. And if you look at relational databases, so uh, there are like what are the relational databases available? Uh, and how will you configure for an SQL database is one of the popular from Azure, right? So how will you create configure elastic pools in SQL database, and also how will you create implement the manage instances in SQL database, and how will you do a CRUD operations on using that. So that is what is covered in this topic. Okay, so I think, yeah, that's all the exam point of view. So then, looking at the lab, right? I think we have lab also here in this exam. So for this lab, right? So some important information from exam point of view is that 25% of the questions will be coming from lab, out of 40 to 60 questions that you get. Uh, so 20 around 20 to 40 questions will come from lab itself. So um, so yeah, 25% around will come from lab. So around, for example, around 5 to 17 questions out of the 40. So will come from this lab exam. So and then they will give you a task, and they will ask you to do it in Azure live. So and then yeah, this task should not take more than 5 minutes. It's like that is it should be simple. It will be generally simple task only. It's not very complex. They will don't ask you to code and all. Uh, they will see about your familiarity with the console, so portal, Azure portal. Yeah, and then they also generally the task, they will not dependent. One task will not depend on other task. Like each question will be independent only. So yeah, here are some sample items that you get in the lab. For example, they will say in the resource group named Project A, create a new web app named this in the US East region using standard S1 app service plan. So this is an example, right? They will so by if you when you open this, you in the console, you will already see this resource group that is already created. So and also, for example, this web app will already be there. So yeah, it depends on the prerequisites. Most of them will be already be there in the system in the console defined for you. So yeah, so you just need to focus on the activity that is assigned, that is given to you. So whatever the question that they are asking, you might have to implement that. So yeah, so that is about this lab. So yeah, another example is like, for example, a resource group named Project A, create and modify the existing web app this to add second deployment slot this. Yeah, for example, you don't need to worry about this, but I'm just giving an example of how this task will look like. This is more on the networking side. So they're asking to create and modify the VNet from VNet to VNet 1, and also to add an additional IP to that VNet. So they're asking you to do it live on the console. So this one is for Cosmos DB. So so they're asking to add a collection. Cosmos DB, it's all called collections. So they're asking to create a new collection called cars, and in that they're asking to add fields like make, model, serial number, and all as properties. So yeah, like it's creating a table and adding column names to the table. Yeah. Yes. So some of the resources, right? I think I already provided here. I think you can take a look at it. But yeah, just for in case you're taking this Azure 303 exam, right? So there is this link is having all the details of what is different between 300 and 303, which is a replacement for AZ-300. So yeah, I think I'll open this link here. You can take a look. Yeah, this I'm talking about the same link where if you open this link, you'll open this page. So most of this section is all whatever I put in the PPT is all from this. You can take a look. Uh, but if you come down in this document, right? So there is a section which compares, yeah, this one, which compares AZ-300 versus 303. 303 is a new exam, right? So it will compare these two. So mostly, if you look at, uh, I did a compare. I think more or less, uh, they're all matching. Okay, so they just that they are in the different headings. That's all. But you see here, it is a comparison. More or less, it is same. For example, here they talk about implement VM for Windows and Linux. Here they're talking about VM already here with a different name. Create and configure VM for Windows and Linux. So, so more or less you can compare these two, right? So, um, yeah, this more or less, yeah, they for example, here implement virtual networking. How will you create a virtual network? So, yeah, that is already created here, implementing virtual network. More or less matching, right? So, everything is similar. Uh, just the headings are different. That's all. But with some are specific topics, maybe here and there there will be differences, but overall concepts are not changed much. For example, here there's no mapping. Like that. This is this is section is there in the this is this is a 300 paper. This 300 section. Right. So here there's some section. This is 300 section. Right. So here it is there, but on the 303 side it is no mapping. So yeah, so which means the topics are more on this side. Uh, Here also some sections are addition, right? So this are yeah. So comparatively, summary is that 90% or 80 to 90%, it is syllabus is same between 300 and 303. Maybe the minute differences here and there. Some, but yeah, overall topics are more in 300, right, compared to 303. But more or less the topics are same. Yeah, I just want to give a heads up for in case we're taking the newer exam, so it will not be big difference for you. Okay, right. So that is what I wanted to cover today. But if you want, you can also start with VM maybe. But maybe if it is already late for you, I think let's break here. So we'll do it in the next session. Maybe the next session we'll do it. Yeah. Any
So
questions?
Nagesh, here I have basic question apart from that certificate.
Uh,
So in Azure they are using Azure IoT Hub, right?
hmm.
So what is difference with the Azure IoT Hub and currently we are working that project? What is different? Any
uh,
idea on that?
yeah, Azure. You're talking about Azure IoT Hub versus Pulsar, is it? Or
No, no, not a person. In our application, we are using device management. Lot of DDM is the 1.0 is the right.
uh,
So the DDM 1.0 and
uh,
Azure IoT Hub are same or not? Nanji?
no, no, it is. I mean, you're talking about Event Hub versus IoT Hub, right?
No, actually, I read about that IoT hub related things. They have lot of concepts are available there, like a digital twin concept and device management. Everything under IoT hub they called.
Yeah, that is primarily this IoT Hub is meant for primarily for IoT. Okay, so for example, yeah, I will just show you this section. Um,
Mm.
this is under.
It's there, Nanji.
Can you
Yeah,
The,
I think it's already there here. Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so if you see here, IoT Hub, I think we have this is purely for ingress of IoT assets, okay, IoT data, okay, that you get. So, so we're talking about it will have a lot of integrations to various sensors, okay. So, but whereas if this Event Hub is one more is there. So I think that's what we use in the other project also. So Event Hub, yeah, Event Hub. Event Hub is also for a similar purpose, but it is not just meant for IoT. Okay, so but IoT's hub is primarily for IoT only. So
okay, but in that above they mentioned device management. Sorry, digital twin is also under IoT
Dakshi,
concept.
that is not what you are doing for DDM. No, the same thing already. It is pre-planned like that. Azure is giving you inbuilt.
see, Azure Digital Twins is something a different product. Okay, but yeah, they all come under IoT landscape. Okay, Digital Twin is a different product. It's already it's just in preview stage. Okay, so this is different product altogether. So yeah.
But in our currently we used all the concept right? Digital
One
twin and
1 minute. I will stop the. I will share, stop this recording.